I trained back in the day when there weren't really conservatory programs.
You made such an interesting point about the things don't always happen quickly.
And back then you got, it wasn't even a Bachelor of Fine Arts, it was a Bachelor of Arts.
I share your love of Shakespeare. It's a true foundation for the art form.
Welcome back, folks. Today, we have an incredible cast of characters joining us, and I mean that literally. Working with us today as a co-host is a dear lady called Maya Post. Now, let me explain a little bit about Maya. Maya is an accomplished artist. She is an incredible singer. She is a writer. She is a producer. She's a world traveler who has performed all over the world as a singer, as an actress. She's also very involved in a podcast that is paying tribute to Stephen Sondheim, and she's going to talk a little bit about that, which is extraordinary. And Maya is good friends with Jason Ma, who is our guest today. So we really have a guest and a host and a guest and a host. But anyway, Mike Boris is joining us. Mike is our audio executive producer. And Krista Steele is our amazing PR person who has brought all these wonderful folks together. So I welcome you all. And my job right now is to disappear and let you guys take over. So Krista, start us off.
So Jason has a world premiere this spring, an incredible play. He's written the music, and we're very excited to learn all about it, to talk about his process today, and to look ahead on what is happening in his life.
But what's it like to be in the theater? What's it like to perform?
Well, I would say that it's kind of like finding your chosen family, and finding similar interests and finding people that you can express similar ideas and find a way to process life around you together with. I think actually on that note, I think I wanted to, because knowing Jason, getting to know him better, I was able to discover a bit about his resume and things that he's done in the past. And quite like me, he started off performing. So for those of you who don't know, Jason has spent his life telling stories, first as an actor and performer on Broadway and off Broadway, and then transitioned to being a composer. And we actually share similar journeys in that regard, and that we started performing and then veered to the other side of the table because it's so rewarding to be telling stories from the beginning and not just being fit in at the very end, which I'm sure Jason is, I hope you will share with us. But before he did that, it's important, I think, for viewers and listeners to know that he appeared in multiple Broadway shows, including Miss Saigon as part of its original Broadway company, in Sly Fox, Shogun the Musical, Prince of Central Park, Chu and Chem, and Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. So you can see he's extremely accomplished, extremely talented. And if you guys are watching this, you can see he's also very handsome and he's got probably the best head of hair out of all of us. Oh my God. Talk about Sly Fox, Silver Fox, right here, right now.
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing.
I love it.
If you can't see it, Google him. So yeah, I would love it if you could talk about your history as a performer a little bit, and then to tell us basically what inspired you to take that leap into writing and jumping onto the other side of the table. But please tell us about how you got into performing, how you were drawn to the arts, and just your background.
I think, Peter's right. Sometimes it's kind of unfathomable how, we theater folk discover ourselves and how we do the thing that we do. And I would just say that, as I think I remember, in basically when I was 13, discovering that that's who I was. I saw the first national tour of the original Broadway company of A Chorus Line when I was 13. And at that time, I was the reigning math champion of my intermediate school. It was the summer after I had gotten that crown and was on my way to high school, and my parents were so excited. And they believed in exposing us to culture and to all sorts of different things. But when I saw a chorus line, I just remember, like, I think all the sort of neurons and connections and synapses on one side of my head that was like really good at math and quiet and studious, just kind of like just migrated to the other side. And it was life changing. I remember saying to my mom, that was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And my mom said, it was kind of boring. And I remember thinking, I'm, this is interesting. This is such a different lens, I guess, even though I didn't call it that back then. So I think, it isn't strange for us. And Maya can speak to this. It is just who we are. So in a way, I'm more comfortable when I'm on stage than I am like talking about myself in front of the internet. That's terrifying to me. But being on stage in front of a lot of people is just home. It's just it's the ocean. We're fish, and it's an easy thing. So yes, that's how I discovered that part of myself, and it just sort of took over and grew and grew and grew, and I ended up choosing it as a career, much to the sort of chagrin and also just fear that my parents had for me. They told me a lot of things when I told them this is what I want to do, and one of them was that it's going to be very difficult for you. We aren't. Our community is not represented in this industry. What makes you think that you can succeed at this when you have so many other talents and you're so smart and you're so this, and why don't you do the things that will actually lead you somewhere? And I didn't listen to them, and I did become successful at it, but it's, success in the theater is not necessarily what everybody thinks of as success in life, right? It is, you're always scrambling, you're always hustling, you're always pushing against the odds. Yes, I've done Broadway shows, but I'm still always like knocking on doors and asking for opportunities and trying to make opportunities for other people. And that involves knocking on different doors, but nothing is easy, and there's no straight line. There's no sort of like prescribed career path. There's no company structure in which you get to sort of grow and become secure. Your future is never secure in the theater, even if you're a big producer on Broadway. I know people who have had a heyday of being very, very successful producers on Broadway. So it's not just, it's all of us. It's everybody who's in the industry does this because it is so important to us. It's who we are. I think it's part of our DNA to be storytellers, to connect with people in this particular way and to move them and to make them think, move the energy in the room, stir something in their souls. Just I think that's why I do it. That's how I got in. It's just part of who we are.
Can you talk a little bit about your training? What training you received?
I trained back in the day when there weren't really conservatory programs for undergrads like there are now. And certainly when you look at like the cast of a chorus line, people from all different backgrounds and different kinds of training or not training could actually get onto Broadway. And that's not the case now, I would say. It's very much, a direct path from your conservatory training right to commercial theater. So my training was at UCLA as a theater major, and back then you got it wasn't even a Bachelor of Fine Arts; it was a Bachelor of Arts, and we took classes with people who wanted to be in management, who wanted to be lighting designers, who wanted to be playwrights and actors. and we all had to take sort of the same core curriculum. Like I had to design a lighting plot, I had to sew costumes in the costume shop, build sets, this sort of thing, and learn how to run a box office. It was very interesting back then. They treated it as as a field of study in which you learned everything about the theater, and then I guess in your graduate studies you would move on. So that was my training initially before I started working professionally. But there was a midpoint in my career where I went back to school. I think I turned 40 while I was there, so it was a big deal in classical acting. Because I had discovered a love for Shakespeare, so I went to the George Washington University school that was affiliated with the Shakespeare Theater Company, and got my master's there. So
I share your love of Shakespeare. It's
yeah,
a true foundation for the art form, I believe.
it is, and I think it's really informed my writing and my acting. I will say I did do a lot of Shakespeare, but part of the reason why I thought Shakespeare was going to be my final path, which it didn't end up being, is that I thought it would be a way to get away from having to, I shouldn't say having to, get away from playing my face all the time. And I think it was, at the time I didn't realize what it was that bothered me about that. I felt like I was being pigeonholed. I felt like people could not see past my face. But in some ways, in retrospect, I think it's also because I was always playing somebody else's idea of who we are and how we are.
Right.
And that was maybe the issue more than it was, because I love playing Asian characters now. I love playing fully fleshed, interesting human, characters that are Asian. And I think, when I was younger, maybe those characters were all written in a certain way by mostly white men. And we didn't get to actually fully express our humanity. So I thought Shakespeare, great. It's really about the training, the language, the roles that everybody can play. And, I would just say that I did work a lot, but I was always the clown. I was always Horatio and never Hamlet. Um, I and I remember I got to do this play. I got to do Antony and Cleopatra at the Public
Wonderful.
with Vanessa Redgrave as Cleopatra. And, you would think, okay, I have made it. And I did. I felt like it at the time. But on the first day of rehearsal, when they were handing out weapons, in my MFA program, I was very adept at stage combat and rapier. And they handed me a samurai sword.
Of course.
And, I look back at my Shakespeare career, and it's like usually multicultural productions. And, there was always a nod. There was always like a mandarin collar or like really colorful silks or a samurai sword or whatever, just always being othered in a way, right? Just being, it's an interesting thing. And I think at the time I didn't really clock it. But again, after a while, it just felt like, oh, this isn't it either.
Right.
This is not the solution to what my discontent is.
Sure.
It seems like a celebration of your background.
It is.
If I'm
It is. I mean, and that is the intention. There's no, like, a lot of the times there's no ill intention. It's really just how, after a while, I think it wears on you when it's always pointed out everywhere you go, and especially in your art. And if you are with a company of actors and they are all dressed a certain way, but you're dressed a different way, and that's what keeps happening as you keep going through your career. And there were certainly opportunities. Like I did Hamlet at CSC, and that was they. I was dressed just like everyone else, and it was lovely, and I loved it. But the recurring theme, of course, is that you think you never know when you're going to be sort of like mugged in a way. It just comes out of nowhere. It's like, so all of a sudden you see a costume sketch and you think, oh, okay, well, that's fine. I'm good. I'm here. They're not asking me to do it with an accent, so that's a kind of a win. But after a while, because it's not just on stage. Everywhere you go in America, you can be mugged by some sort of microaggression, we'll call it. So, and these things, they could be interpreted as a celebration. They could be intended as a celebration, but they can also feel like a little bit of you're different. You're different than us. So we have to make sure that, we acknowledge that difference in a way that might be very superficial. Whereas, I really want people to feel what we have in common, what Asian humanity is. I think that was the underlying reason why I'm a writer now, because I feel like that's where I have the most agency over this situation that we live in as Asians in America. I can write characters that are specifically Asian, with their humanity fully expressed in a way that makes people think, oh, despite the differences, there's this core of humanity inside that is exactly like mine.
You spoke about going to Shakespeare, like looking for something. It sounds to me like you were looking for that universality of
Yeah,
what unites us all. And so
yeah.
then to be tokenized in that experience was obviously disappointing, but it sounds like it then also led you to trying to find that universality within the stories of your own culture. And
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk a bit about that pivot for you to begin writing. What inspired you to do that? Because also, if listeners don't know this, you champion diverse storytelling. It's essential to the core of you as a creator. So I'd
It
love for you to dive into that a bit.
it is. It was a slow pivot. It was a very gradual pivot. Because honestly, the I had always done, like, I was the guy in the ensemble who could put together a vocal chart for a Broadway Cares, presentation. I did it even in high school, just all the way through college and onward. I'd done some songwriting, but writing an actual musical, a piece for the theater, a song for the theater, that came out of the blue. And it was, I hate to, I don't always write like this, but the first time something very sort of strange and maybe a little metaphysical happened. I was in Miss Saigon, in the middle of a performance, and a lyric and a piece of melody just sort of like came to me in the middle of the show, and would not leave me alone. It really became an obsession, and I just that like for the next few months, I spent every moment when I wasn't on stage, or sleeping or eating, writing, and writing and writing and writing. And this little snippet turned into a song, which led me to ask who's singing this and why are they singing this. And these lyrics seem very specific. And it became clear to me that it was about somebody on a mountain on the West Coast. It wasn't in the modern times. It feels like, a long time ago. And after a while, it coalesced into the story of a young man in the 19th century, in 1866, actually, specifically, in the Sierra Nevada, where he was part of the Chinese labor force that was building the Transcontinental Railroad. And I would say by the fall, I had a first draft, and this started like in the spring. So it was really quick. And it's because I was obsessed with this thing that came out of the blue and just hit me and said, you need to write me. And the world revealed itself to me. The characters came, the story came. It kind of layered over the history, that historical period, really neatly. So in a way, it just felt like it was a story waiting to be told, and I was the lucky one who got to be the vessel to tell it. And so that was in the mid '90s, and I don't know. Here we go. We had our world premiere in the fall of 2021. So in the intervening years from 1994, 5 to 2021, I tried to get this thing done. And, the first time out, I showed it to my agent, who was very, very interested. And he happened to also be a literary agent, so that worked out well. And back then, your agent would submit your script, which is different than now. And we got it out to a lot of people who were intrigued, were interested in looking at this. But the feedback back then was really, really negative and very much of its time. The gatekeepers were all white, and I think it was just something that they didn't know what to do with, other than the public. Thank God, I will acknowledge that. But the commercial producers and the regional theater people were basically bamboozled by it and perplexed by it and angered by it, to be honest. This is a story that was basically 12 Asian men and one Asian woman in a cast, with no sort of like tour guide or savior character to take you through. We in The King and I and Miss Saigon, we look at Asian people through the white character's lens. And this was one where white people were basically off stage, that we were looking at Asian people through Asian people's lenses and watching two Asian characters fall in love, which was also very, very rare back then. Usually, well, especially in the musical theater, that was just not the way we looked at these relationships. And yes, I'll just quote some feedback. Somebody, very, very powerful, successful producer who I'd worked with before, basically started with a compliment in his rejection letter, just saying it was, this is so professional, and it's sounds like a Broadway musical, but it also sounds like two old white Jewish guys wrote this, and why are you trying to write a Broadway show? I think your creative time would be spent better spent making Chinese opera more palatable to Western ears. I think was exactly what the feedback was, and that this was nothing that was usable, I think, to him. And again, I don't think he was trying to be mean, or now we would say that's kind of a racist thing to say. I don't think this was the intention. I think he was, because we did have a relationship, I think he was just trying to be helpful. And a lot of the feedback in that initial sort of push was like that, or even there were people who were literally hostile. Like, why would you write something like this? Was somebody's question. I just, at the time, I just thought, okay, well, maybe I'm not a writer. Maybe that's not what, maybe that's, or this isn't going to work out, given that kind of pushback. And at the time, I didn't really understand the context of what was going on or what, what was happening. We didn't have the vocabulary for it back then. I didn't have a community of writers, or even, yeah, there was nobody to basically there was no mentor to put this into context for me. And we didn't have the vocabulary that we do now about like microaggression, systemic racism, historically excluded, historically underserved, cultural appropriation, the white lens, all these things that we can talk about now and have the vocabulary for did not exist back then. The internet barely existed back then. I had to actually go to the library to do my research for this. So the happy ending is that, I would always lick my wounds and put the thing away. But it was like a 4 or 5 year cycle where I just, I'd come back out, put it away, come back out, put it out, put it away. And what's interesting about the rejections over like each time was the tone changed, the way people looked at the piece changed as the world changed, as we became more connected, as we became more global, as things started to happen, and people had like a more of a worldview that could listen to and look at this piece in a way. It just got better and better and better. And by the 2010s, people were really, really kind and supportive and interested and excited by the piece. And so, it's a kind of a wonderful way to experience change and to have it like reflected back at you. It's not just about the way you move through the world. It's like watching your piece move, excuse me, move through the world. So that's the journey of how Gold Mountain got to its world premiere at the Utah Shakespeare Festival in 2021.
And I'm so glad it did. But actually, there's a song in it called My Love that I am so enamored with, truly. And there's this one lyric in it that really just keeps going round and round in my head. It was, and I'm gonna mess it up, so you might have to correct me. But it was something about in the morning there's morning.
Yes.
And and for those who don't know the song, I've got it. I've got notes. I've got my notes here. It's a song that expresses deep longing and devotion and a promise of reunion to a love left behind when a character works towards their dream and they're separated. And despite the separation, they're both just doing everything they can to move forward and to reunite one day. And it's so beautiful, and you capture the emotional toil of loving someone so deeply, missing them, and the longing and the yearning. And what a beautiful way to show, again, like you were saying, two Chinese characters so deeply in love with each other, but working toillessly towards this dream and what we all are trying to do. And again, that brings it back to the universality, although through the specific lens of your people and your culture, which I think is so beautiful. Because for those who can't see me, I am not Chinese, yet my heart was so deeply connected to this song in particular, and about how what you do to build yourself, even though sometimes there's sacrifices along the way. And it was just so moving and so touching. And even better, sung by our mutual friend, Ali Ewoldt, who's
Yes.
unbelievable, a truly unbelievable artist as well.
Yes.
And I think she was actually quite integral to this piece for you as well,
Yeah.
wasn't she?
Yeah. It's funny. When I wrote the piece, it was such a small number of us in New York City, and I'm talking about Asian American and Asian theater artists. Miss Saigon was basically starting this pool of talent that actually became a self-sustainable sort of ecosystem that never really existed in New York City before then. So whatever my personal feelings are about Miss Saigon and its problems as a piece of storytelling, in the modern era. What is the miracle of that show is that New York City finally got a permanent talent pool of Asian American and Asian theater artists, musical theater artists, that weren't going away and never have gone away since. And that has also created, in parallel, a writing community for Asian writers of musical theater. Are not going anywhere, and it's a herd, a little herd of unicorns that's getting larger and larger, and it's really exciting. There are so many really talented writers of Asian descent in New York City now, just doing their thing, writing, developing their pieces. Somebody's going to break through. So Allie, back to the question. Allie Ewalt, who is the first Asian American woman, as well as the first woman of color to play Christine Daae on Broadway. She's amazing. So I met Allie while we were both singing in a concert, and I remember the first time she sang in front of me was one of those periods where Gold Mountain, the script and the score were in a box under my bed, and it was amazing because it was just before, it was in the late 2000s, and I think it was meant to be, because it was just at the time when people were taking the piece, were willing to take the piece seriously. I hadn't had it out in a while. I hadn't put it out in the world in a while. But when I heard her sing, I realized it's like the embodiment of the female character, the sole female character in this show. I was an old-fashioned guy. I wrote for Sopranos, and this was like the ultimate Asian soprano. She is amazing. She has created a career that transcends race. She is like a Broadway star, and hearing that voice and seeing her work and getting to know her as a human being, I just thought, this is it. I've got to get the box back out from under the bed and get going. And it literally, from that point on, Allie was in every iteration of development, and every concert, every table read, everything, which led to her, gosh, I would say 7, 8, 9 years later, we finally got to the world premiere, and she stuck with me during our concert in New York City at the Time Center. Allie was doing Phantom of the Opera in rehearsals for a Carnegie Hall concert, as well as another holiday concert for New York Pops. And I remember thinking, when I heard that she was doing these three things, I thought, well, I'm going to have to find someone else. There's no way. And she said, nope, I'm going to do all of them, all at the same time. And Gold Mountain is a priority, and don't you dare do it with anybody else. And I was like, okay, but how are you going to do this?
It's still a mystery.
Yeah, I mean, she does. She is firing on every cylinder at all times. She's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, Allie she's my muse. She's my retroactive muse. Even though I wrote it before I met her, she inspired me to really see, to really be able to manifest it literally. It happened because of her.
Oh, sorry, keep going.
We are dear friends.
Yes.
We are dear friends.
You made such an interesting point about the things don't always happen quickly, and so sometimes along the way, different things inspire you or make you allow you to say, "Oh, I need to pick that up again." So,
yeah.
Like you said, that she's your muse. Are there other things that really inspire you when you are writing or during your creative process that really get you into the flow, or as a human being allow you the confidence to pick things up when sometimes life forces you to put them down?
I think I'm lucky in that way, because I I'm very creative, but I don't create for creation's sake, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
I think writing Gold Mountain and seeing the power of representation on stage. One of the first times we did it in concert all the way through, there were Chinese people in the audience, and my my friend Leah Chang, who is the documentarian for our community as well as a very talented performer, uh, told me, she said, "I have never heard Chinese people talk at the stage before." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You know how black people talk to the stage?" I was like, "Yes." And Leah would know because she is a strong advocate for the black community and theater. Um, and she said that was happening. That was happening during Gold Mountain. I thought, wow. And I got to be in the audience for much of the world premiere, and I got to experience that too. I got to watch Asian Americans and Asians of all sort of from all different countries and different generations watch themselves on stage, and it was so powerful. So that is the reason why I keep writing. That's my creative process. It's that if there's a story or a project that I can contribute to that creates this sort of energy of people feeling seen, of other people feeling like they are seeing us in a new way or in a way that resonates with their hearts and souls. That is a great reason to create, and that drives me. So I think that's my process. I don't think it's necessarily most people's processes when they write, but that's what mine is.
Right. Yeah, it's mission driven.
It's mission driven. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very motivating for me.
Yeah.
Jason, can you tell us about your new play, The Great Race?
Oh, yes, we should talk about that. The Great Race is a play that's being written that has been written by Y.M. And it's the Great Race is in reference to the Chinese myth of how the East Asian zodiac was created. So, the year of the horse is where we are now, and there's the year of the monkey, and the year of the dragon, the year of the ox. So the story is of how the Jade Emperor of the Heavens decided that he would have 12 years named after the first 12 finishers in the great race across the river of the animal kingdom. And so this is the reference of the Great Race, and the story is it takes place in a modern neighborhood and there are three kids from three different families in this neighborhood who are in conflict. And part of that conflict is that one of the kids is of Chinese descent, and there is some age-appropriate racism in the story. It is a very brave thing of this playwright, but I think he's found the way in to depict this, and there is basically a lesson in problem solving, in teamwork, in coming together, and understanding each other by working together. And I think in the story, some of the animals actually work in pairs or teams to get across the river, which is the way it's depicted in the actual myth. So he's found a way to sort of link that story through the Chinese character's magical Chinese grandma, so that the people in the real world, the parents and the children, go into the world of the mythical world of the Great Race and become the different animals, and depict sort of the race as it goes across, and how they work together, and how they have their conflicts, and how they solve them. And it's really sort of a beautiful meshing of East and West and modern and ancient. And I'm writing songs and incidental music for this piece at the Rose Theater in Omaha, Nebraska. A wonderful little jewel of programming for young people and their families. I don't know how they've done it, but they have managed to make a self-sustaining theater that programs only family-friendly programming. And they commissioned this year 3 new pieces for kids of plays and musicals. And it's kind of a miracle. It's a little miracle theater, and I'm so happy to be there.
That's so wonderful. When is the premiere date?
Oh my gosh, it's mid-April. I
That's
can't give
so
you.
soon.
It is soon. We've been working on it for I would say over a year now. We had a long runway, so and we're still working on it. And there are puppets.
Excellent.
Yeah, the animals are a combination of very, very large puppets for stage and people like in a costume of animals. So they do both. They puppeteer some of the animals, and then they are also playing the animals. And it's a small cast of very, very talented, very intrepid, creative artists, and I can't wait. We're going into rehearsal very soon.
Jason, is anybody going to film this?
I don't know. Most theaters do archival filming, but I don't know about the Rose Theater. My guess is that once this is done, maybe we can license it for other productions. I don't know. Right now, we're just concentrating on, getting it to the kids in Omaha.
It seems like an incredible documentary.
Oh, sure.
It sure does.
So basically, if anyone's anywhere near Omaha, you should make sure that you go and check this out because it just
Yes.
sounds so beautiful and so fascinating. And I feel like everyone has really gotten into the Chinese zodiac this year.
Yes.
So what a perfect time for the story to be coming out. Everyone's really like, Year of the Fire Horse, let's go.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what a
It's
wonderful time to impart that information to children and tell this beautiful myth to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about it. It's kind of exciting. I mean, I've written for school tours before, and it's so exciting to have a show that actually sits in a regular proscenium house, and have that come to life. The puppets are delightful. Our director is Alan Muraoka, who has been playing the grocer on Sesame Street for decades now. In fact, I think tomorrow he's being inducted into the Emmy sort of like Silver Circle of I think it's for basically longevity and just playing this character on Sesame Street. Anyway, he's the director, so of course he has access to like the most amazing puppeteers and puppet creators and constructors, and so these puppets are next level wonderful.
Hey Jason, I know you were recently involved in a production of Twelfth Night that you wrote all the songs for. That sounds like it was a little bit unique. You want to tell us about that experience and what it was like for you?
Oh, I love this particular challenge. I have written songs for a number of 12 nights. And each 12th night has its own world because the director, and actually worked with Nelson Eusebio, this amazing director who has set 12th night in 1950s, 60s Hong Kong, in a island that seems like Cuba, and then most recently, and I feel like we've been workshopping it for this last production at Kansas City Rep, where we had, basically it was just we had come out of COVID, and he thought, you know what, let's do something really, really interesting. Let's cast our show first. Make it as sort of representational of like the global sort of world we live in. And once we've cast the cast, we will decide what the sort of intrinsic culture is for each of the characters.
Oh.
So our Orsino was this sort of black actor musician who was really who played blues but also R&B. Our Olivia was grew up in Brazil. Our Festi was a Filipino musician actor who had like pre-colonial instruments as well as a guitar at his disposal. And then once that happened, I thought, oh no, what am I doing? I'm gonna have to like get all these different musical sort of influences into a coherent storytelling piece of theater, because there are, there are all these songs in the script. There's like lots of lyrics and poems and things that can be musicalized all over Twelfth Night. It is the most musical. It is literally a musical sometimes of Shakespeare's canon. So anyway, the long and short of it is that every single designer, the set designer, the lighting designer, the costume designer, especially me, we all had to talk to these actors and find out, really specifically, who are your favorite artists? What is your favorite song? What did you listen to growing up? What did your parents listen to? And create basically a sound and a look and a set, a house for them. And then to use their backgrounds in the story. And I can't tell you how joyful and beautiful this production ended up being. It was amazing to watch all these different cultures sort of like express themselves in each character and in the work of each designer and writer involved. And we were also we were hand in hand with the actors as far as figuring out what the choices would be. And I don't know. As a composer, I don't think I'll ever have a better experience than this particular production. It was amazing.
Was it a challenge to keep it cohesive to the whole production and story with all those musical styles?
It was, but it was a really rewarding challenge, because what would happen is, because these characters are interacting, with each other, the music could do the same. And it actually ended up being much easier than I thought. I thought that I was really unqualified to explore all this different kind of music. But I think with the help of the actors and basically finding out specifically what drove them musically, what spoke to their hearts and souls, what was in their sort of history and DNA as individuals and as artists, it made it very specific as to what it needed to be. And because it was them, literally, it was the musical version of them, artistically interpreted. And that's what all these elements were. It was the house of Orsino was this beautiful sort of, I don't know, what would you call it? Sort of futuristic, but African based R&B bachelor pad thing that just really, really kind of, it just melded so well with him. And then the Brazil influenced house of Olivia, and how those two characters meshed together created the music that would, sort of like bridge their worlds. It was really, really exciting. And, the budget was definitely quite good for this, because they had, they had time. They gave us time to workshop this in the room with people. And we were, encouraged to think big and to think crazy. And it really yielded some magical, magical moments on stage.
So, what are you excited for next?
Uh, well, I am in the middle of writing musical, and I think it might be my last one because, it takes so long. I don't know if I'll have any time to write after this one. I'm writing an origin story musical of Mulan.
Oh,
So we're exploring we are we're taking it from her childhood, and we're also putting the lens on her family because I think it's really interesting to think about what kind of family creates a legend, you know. And Allie is playing her mother.
oh, nice.
Yes, it has to be an extraordinary family, and it has to have, to create such a sort of brave woman in a period where that was just not a thing. Who would do this for her family? And so obviously there is the connections are very strong. The background is very specific. The it's a fun puzzle. It's like how does a woman from a village in China, in ancient China, save the nation? What is the path? What is the logical sort of like, I can, how did this happen?
Yeah,
And
what are
that's
the
been,
qualities?
yeah,
That
what are the
they,
qualities and what are the events?
hmm
And that's why I'm so interested in the family because I feel like a family creates, especially the mother and father, create this human being. They're, it's they are not just they don't just kind of pop in as heroes. They become heroes somehow. So that's been a really fun story to create, and and then I get to tell another story with a stage full of Asian musical theater actors, and I'm very very happy about how this particular project is going, and so that's the next thing after the Great Race. I'm going to spend a good deal of time for the rest of the year working on this one.
Do you enjoy performing more than writing?
I I have to say I do continue to perform. It's mostly in developmental phases of pieces for friends and for writers that I admire and who are basically doing the same thing as me, basically telling stories that in some way expand our perception of Asian humanity. And almost always it's going to be an Asian writer, Asian composers. So I do enjoy that. I also do feel very much at home anytime I do this. I still, I don't know. The writing feels more useful, if that makes sense. I feel like if I can be a service to somebody else and their vision, I did do actual production of Pacific Overtures at Signature Theater, and it was the first production of the associate artistic director. His name is Ethan Hurd. He's the first person of color and the first Asian person to be on staff and senior staff at Signature, and this was his first production. So it felt important to participate if I was needed. So that was really rewarding. And I'll just say that his Pacific Overtures was unlike any I had ever seen before or done before, because he decided he wanted to direct that show through an Asian American lens. Not an Asian lens, not an American lens, but an Asian American lens. And it was very, very interesting and a really, really, I'll just say, I don't want to brag, but John Weidman came and saw a production and he cried and he said, I think this is the best one I've ever seen
Wow,
to us. So, um,
how powerful.
yeah. So yes, I love acting still, but as far as enjoying, I don't know. I think I've gotten too old to think about whether I enjoy things or not. I think at this point it becomes about like, do I need to do this?
Oh,
Is this the way I want to spend my time? Whatever time I have left. And you start thinking about those things.
well, it sounds like no matter what role you're playing, whether on stage or writing, you are always such a valued collaborator in anything that you're a part of. And I think anyone that gets to work with you would be lucky to work
Oh,
with
Maya,
you.
that's so sweet. Thank you.
Well, I mean it. You're a true gem.
My parents, they I grew up in a very specific period of time where China had not yet, like the people who raised me, my grandparents and my parents, did not come from communist China. They came from the sort of the end of actually, I think my grandparents probably were raised by people who were right at the end of the dynastic rule of China. And my parents were born during that short period of like flirting with democracy / more representation before World War II. But they were very traditional. The values then were very, very much steeped in Confucianism and Taoism and collectivism, in really thinking of others before thinking of yourself, thinking of your family before thinking of yourself. I think that's why it was so shocking that I chose to be an actor. But I think that's where this comes from, because I do feel like I'm a collectivist. I don't think in terms of individuality. Americans think of individual rights and individualism. And, for a long time when I was growing up, I thought, this is the way, and my mother even said to me, I wish I had raised you more like an American, because sometimes I think you're too not assertive enough. But now when I look at like what, collectivism can turn into communism, but individualism can turn into some of the things that we're seeing now. So I think maybe a little bit of both is a good thing. And I think maybe my Mulan story is about that. It's about the little bit of both. It's about an individual who does something extraordinary as an individual, but is always thinking of others as well, and prioritizing that even before her own sort of success or her own wants. And I think maybe that's the way to do it. It's like, know who you are, know what you want and how you can be of use, but how you can be of use to others, how you can take what you can do and make a positive difference in the world, whether it's, in any career.
This has been such a wonderful hour that we spent with you and with everybody, with Maya and Krista and Mike. But you are an extraordinary talent, and we thank you so much for your time. Maya, thank you so much for your time. We're going to grab Maya on our own show, and we might even bring Jason back to interview Maya. That would
be fun.
That would be kind of cool. Let's put her on the spot for a second. But anyway, really, seriously, wish you both the best of luck and success. And it's been an honor to have you on our show.
We're proud to be sponsored by Litchfield Distillery. They like to call themselves Batchers in honor of the early farmers of Northwest Connecticut, a region known for its ample yield of wheat, corn, and barley. Growing these crops in the rocky terrain requires grit and determination. For the past decade, Litchfield Distillery has been busy distilling Litchfield County's best harvest into fine craft spirits, one batch at a time. Litchfield Distillery, the spirit of hard work.